Hello, you're live with ArchieLuxury. I'm back from Malaysia. And I'm on the ArchieLuxury channel, and I'm doing a really interesting show. I've got an interesting show with my good friend, the Super Collector. This is Mr. Super Collector. How are you, Mr. Super Collector?
I'm fine, Archie. How you doing?
Hey, I'm okay there. I'm really keen to talk to you because you are one of the few people. You are one of the few people who has the balls to say the truth. Let me explain. Got so many Rolex fanboys, and I myself have been a Rolex fanboy, and I do love the brand. And I do say to people, if you don't want to lose money on watches, Rolex is a very good place to be. However, I wanted to, in the corner of the room, I wanted to talk about the untalkable, speak about the unspeakable, and I thought the best person I could get would be Rudy. What we're talking about is Rolex AD lies.
It's not just Rolex AD lies, Archie. It's also Rolex themselves that lie. And I've actually got documented evidence to prove it.
Look, I got to be honest with you. If it was any other industry, if it wasn't the luxury watch industry, they would not be allowed to carry on the way they do, because it's luxury. It's not a necessity. It's not a motor car. Because it's a luxury timepiece, these companies can really do anything they want because it's luxury. And, you know, these lies, they originally started with Hermes. When they had the Birkin handbag, they limited supply. You remember the Hermes Birkin handbag? Like, that's like a $10,000 handbag.
Yeah, I do.
And you always had to go on a waiting list for that item. And there was actually a very famous book written called Bringing Home the Birkin. It's this guy who used to buy and sell Birkins. And he said, as soon as you went into a store, he actually traveled the world buying Birkins. He said, as soon as you walked in, you bought a few scarves, you bought a few things, they would offer you a Birkin. He said, it's like clockwork. And I got to tell you the truth there, Rudy. Rolex has followed this model. I've just done an exclusive tour. I just came back from Malaysia.
Right.
And they are recalcitrant fuckers, by the way. Our Prime Minister many years ago called their leader recalcitrant. A recalcitrant. Nobody, mind you, nobody knew what the fuck that word meant, but gee, it sounded good, you know?
Now, I'm sure in Malaysia it's the same situation as Dubai. And I'll give you an example, right? In Dubai,
there is absolutely, let me just tell you, there is absolutely no steel sports watches on display. No steel sports.
There won't be. Now, let me explain to you the situation before I talk about England, about Dubai, right?
Mm-hmm.
In England,
mm-hmm.
an AD, per AD will get 4 Daytonas a year, 2 black and 2 white, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's 4 a year.
Yes.
On average.
Yes.
In Dubai, they get 30 a month steals. 30 a month, right? Of steel Daytonas. But you can go on a list in Dubai for Daytona, but you will never get that Daytona because Siddiqui, central office, goes through the list, sees who's bought what, and he decides who will get that Daytona. It's as simple as that. You know, it's as simple as that. And what they also do is that they're doing it now with the other sports models. And even in the Cayman Islands, the guy showed me in the store in the Cayman Islands, he had 50 steel Daytonas in stock, but he would only give them to people that spent more than 300 grand with the store. Complimentary. He would give it to them complimentary if you spent over 300 grand in the store.
That's a fair bit of coin to spend.
Yeah. And if you spend that money, you get a steel Daytona.
Now, this is the whole thing. I got to be honest with you. This Rolex Ponzi scheme has been like this. It's been like this for a while. In Australia here, I remember in the 90s and early noughties, you could walk into an AD. They would have Submariners. They'd have Submariner no dates. They'd have an Explorer 1, Explorer 2, countless GMTs. Countless GMTs. The GMT, Pepsis, Cokes, all there. And
but you know, in those days, it was a Submariner that was hard to get. It was a still Submariner with the one.
Well, actually, believe it or not, the Explorer was pretty hot too. You know, the Explorer 2, it was pretty hot. But they always had subs. They had subs. They had Sea Dwellers. And I got to tell you, in all honesty, this is one giant Ponzi scheme. It's just one big giant con. They don't appreciate the customers. You know, they really don't appreciate the customers.
But have you noticed, Paul, that when you go into an AD, they treat you like crap? It's almost like they're saying that it's a privilege that they're going to sell you a Rolex. It's like you've got to walk over hot coals to have one. Do you see what I mean? It's the whole attitude of the company. Now, I'll give you an example where Rolex lie, okay, where Rolex lie. It's like, for instance, in the UK at the moment, ADs are saying that it's Rolex's policy that when they sell you the watch, they've got to take the stickers off, right? Okay, they've got to take the stickers off.
Mm-hmm.
So I complained about this, and then they gave me this whole elaborate spiel about, oh, it's like when you buy a new car and they take all the protection off the car, and this is the Rolex way, and so on. So I actually then wrote to Rolex and challenged them on it.
Yep.
And he actually, the funny thing was, the AD had already contacted Rolex because I complained.
Yeah.
And what Rolex sent me was a complete carbon copy of what the AD sent me. So what the AD had done, he copied and pasted what Rolex told him to say, right?
Yeah.
So I then replied back to Rolex and said, so are you telling me it is your policy that all ADs must remove the stickers? And the guy, Will Tyrrell from Rolex UK, wrote back to me and said, it is not Rolex's policy. It's down to the AD, right? And then when I challenged the AD about it, again, they said it was Rolex. So basically what Rolex are doing is they're telling the AD one thing and telling the customer something completely different, right? Okay. Now, a second thing about Rolex is now, they've got to the stage now, what they're saying in the United Kingdom to the majority of the dealers is that they've got to withhold now the papers for a year. So when you buy a Rolex sports model like a Submariner or a GMT, the AD will withhold those papers of the warranty for a year and they're safe. This is the way they are going with Rolex. It's getting ridiculous.
I've never heard so much bullshit in my life. And you know something, truthfully? They aren't really anything that special. I got to be honest with you. You know, I love Rolex, okay? But I really prefer my JEWELLERY Reverso. I even love my IWC. That's a bit of a considered a bit doggy at the moment. The IWC market is soft. But I just can't believe it.
To buy. It's like when you buy shares. You don't buy shares when they're high. You buy them when they're low.
No, that's true. Very, very good point there. It's It's absolutely amazing, and I don't know what you can say. It's pretty. That's very true. It's very true.
Well, I'll give you another example where ADs lie. I'll give you an example, and you'll like this, right? I was on the list for a Rolex Daytona for 2 years, right?
Yes.
And the Rolex AD gave my allocation to Lord Sugar, Alan Sugar, Lord Alan Sugar, who founded Amstrad. They
I know.
him my Daytona,
Lord
right?
Alan Sugar. That's right.
Yeah, they gave him my Daytona, right?
Yeah.
And then the next allocation, they gave it to a famous cricketer called Peter Trago instead, right?
Yes.
And when I challenged them about it, they said, "Oh, we don't put Daytonas. We don't have a waiting list for Daytonas anymore. We put them in the window," which is not true, because I know from my other AD friend that if they put a steel Daytona in the window, they would be punished for it by Rolex, right? And I challenged the AD, and he had nowhere to move. I said, "So what you're saying is that Lord Sugar happened to be 300 miles away in your store, and it happened to be at the window at the time he walked past?" And they couldn't answer it. They said, "Well, we don't discuss that." I said, "No, because you're lying." I said, "Why don't you just be honest and say you gave it to him because he recommended you as Retailer of the Year," which is what it was, you know. And this is what they do, and they're not truthful people, and this is what they use the steel models. What they're doing is, this particular company is that they're withholding those models and giving them to certain people as bribes, as publicity favors. This is what they're doing, you know, but they won't just come out and say it. And then when I complained to Rolex about it, they didn't give a shit. They said, "We cannot tell Rolex dealers how to sell their watches," which you and I know is not true, because they're on the AD's back all the time of how they have to work with regards to their products.
Yes.
And the funny thing is, right, this is why companies like Patek Philippe, right, and Audemars Piguet are such a higher level than Rolex, because that same AD stuffed me on the Nautilus, right? Okay, stuffed me on the Nautilus. I complained to Patek, so I managed to get their phone number. I sent them the correspondence of me and the AD that I had a Nautilus due in October, which they then gave to somebody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Patek Philippe took it so personally, they provided me a Nautilus within 6 weeks from their special allocation.
I see.
But Rolex didn't give a shit. But Rolex did not give a shit.
No, they wouldn't give a shit.
And
you
that's
know,
the difference.
the Rolex themselves there in America, they have the right, listen to this, when you ship an item to America, they got the right to seize it. Did you know that?
Oh, yeah, that's oh yeah, I know that. They will seize it. They will seize it. They will seize it. The only way you can send a watch to America is if you take it yourself.
Now, it's very, very nasty. They are a very, 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 very nasty situation, and it's basically come about. I'll tell you why. Because every U.S. president is given a Rolex.
But it's gone beyond that.
And U.S. Customs will seize, or can seize, any Rolex watch that enters the USA and will not allow it through. Only Rolex Switzerland and Rolex USA are able to ship to the States.
But it's beyond that. It's gone to the fact now, because of the way Rolex are, I explained to you early in the week, they pissed me off so much the way they treat their customers. I sold my entire collection. I sold the lot. I don't want to be part of an organization like that.
Well,
of supporting their brand.
The problem is Rolex has become a monster. You know, Rolex has become a monster because the brand is so popular. They're not a business. They don't have shareholders.
They're a charity.
Exactly. That's right. Because that Hans Wilsdorf didn't have children, and it's a very, 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 very nasty conglomerate. Really, that's what it is. I mean, they do sells there. Make no bones about it. They are a very aggressive business. And Rolex has also not cared about the collector market because there's no money. You know this, don't you? You understand that.
You don't know it. Do you know, this year, Paul, right? This year, one of the top guys of Rolex was fired in the UK because a certain group of ADs were paying him money to get extra allocations of sports models. And they did an audit, and they went around every AD and did an audit of what watches they had and where they were sold.
Yes.
And certain ADs were closed down of what this guy was supplying them from Rolex himself. And they just did a whole bust. He got fired instantly because he was supplying extra sports model allocations to certain ADs for bribes. It's shocking.
It's absolutely terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And
I think the thing is this, what my point is, Paul, and you understand this, there is a whole world out there beyond Rolex for a similar amount of money and a better watch. You know,
yes.
I tried to explain this to someone the other day, how Rolex are ripping people off, as an example. And I'm talking UK money because I don't understand it in Australian because I haven't done the conversion. But a Rolex GMT in white gold, right?
Yes.
It's £29,000 and a bit of change, right?
Yes.
The steel model is just over £6,000.
Yes.
So you think about how much money they're charging people just for the gold. And you're telling me that there's 20 grand's worth of gold in that watch?
No, that's right there. It's very, very, very interesting there. Interesting enough, in a Sotheby's catalog, there was an important notice saying that importation into the United States of Rolex watches, Sotheby's cannot arrange for the delivery of Rolex watches to the United States because US laws restrict the importation of Rolex watches. A buyer or a designated agent may collect the property in the country of sale. So why does US customs restrict the import of watches? It's because Rolex gives each president. This is the reason. And I got to be completely honest with you. The Swiss aren't the nicest people in the world, Rudy. You know this, don't you?
Of course, I've been there. You know,
the whole Swiss banking system is based on stolen money. Did you know this or not?
Yeah, of course I do. What? I mean, there's a lot of German money in there that people can't access anymore because they don't have the codes. There's a lot of money floating about there.
Yeah, well, I mean, how would you like it if you had depositors who never came to do a withdrawal? In World War II, that's what happened in World War II. And this is a fact. I'm not making this up. I'm not an extremist. I'm just telling you the truth. See, the Swiss can be, just absolutely. They are awful to deal with. You've got to be so careful when you're dealing with the Swiss. They can be really nasty people. And I'm sorry to say this. I'm very, very sorry to say this, Rudy, but like it's going to get any better. They are nasty fuckers. They have a Ponzi scheme where they are manipulating things. They are doing all sorts of things. And I'm sorry to say this to you, Clark. I'm sorry to say this, Rudy, but it's never going to get better. You know this, don't you?
Of course it's not. Of course it's not. I mean, it's already rumoured that Rolex are going to put their prices up another 10% in the UK in the very near future, And it gets to the point where it gets ridiculous because the watch is not worth the money that they are asking, And that's... And like, for instance, if you think about it, Paul, right? Like I said to you, if I said to you, like, the GMT is 29 grand, right?
Yes.
Now, which would you, what in your position, right? If you had £29,000 to spare in your pocket,
yes,
what would you buy? Would you buy a gold GMT or would you buy a Patek or an AP?
Well, that's a very, very good question there. That really is good question. I mean, look, Rolex has some charms. I must admit, Rolex does have some charms. It's waterproof. There's certain things I do like about Rolex.
Actually, they're not waterproof anymore. They have to say water resistant, because unless the case is fully sealed with no crown, they cannot no longer call it waterproof. They've got to call it water resistant.
Yes. I got to be completely honest with you, okay? I love Rolex still. I know.
Oh, I do. They make me a lot of money. I flip their watches all the time. They're making me a lot of money to buy what I really want. I love Rolex for that reason, because people were stupid enough to pay over the odds for it. So I love Rolex because they make me money.
Look, I got to say Rolex, but I mean, you know, look, I'll tell you this. You start off into watches, you always want a Rolex, right?
Of course.
It's like wanting a Mercedes-Benz. Then you suddenly realize, well, hey, hang on a minute. It is a great car, but there are better cars out there. There's a Jaguar. There's better stuff out there. And this is the whole thing. I got to be honest with you, Rudy. Rolex, really, they are arrogant as fuck. They are arrogant as fuck. I mean, I've been to Bangkok, Singapore, Hong Kong, Vietnam. I've been to Indonesia, and you know what? There's a shortage of steel sports watches. Now they're making a million.
Can you imagine this, though, Paul? Right, from another
products a year. You understand that? And you're telling me
1.4 actually. It's 1.4. But can you imagine this, right?
They've never made so many. They've never made so many watches in their entire history. You know that?
Think about it from this point of view, though. The poor owner of that AD has got a shop full of watches that are non-sports models he cannot sell. He's got to pay for those premises. He's got to pay for all the trimmings of the Rolex logos and everything else. And they're not supplying him with shit. Only the stuff that no one wants. Can you imagine that? I mean, when you go in the stores, they're empty because they haven't got the models that people want.
That's exactly it. I mean, would you know? I got to tell you, it's this whole Rolex scheme. It started with the Daytona, short supply. Then it's progressed to the Submariners, steel subs, the GMTs. This is one giant Ponzi scheme. And, you know, the thing I can't believe is Rolex, they released the James Cameron. Well, all it is a different dial to the standard deep sea. What's the big deal?
But not just that. People really get angry with me when I say it, that the watch is not fit for purpose, in the fact that the bracelet is not adequate for the watch. It's too top heavy as a watch because the bracelet is not correct for that kind of watch. I got to be honest with you.
The deepest is actually it's filled with oil. Did you know that? There's this brand which is filled with oil. That's the ones that go to the deepest depth. Instead of having air in the watch, you actually have it filled with oil, and it can go to 10,000 meters.
Wow, I didn't know that.
It's just, yeah. I got to be honest with you. In complete honesty, Rudy, Rolex bores the shit out of me. I'm really getting sick of it. I'm sick of Rolex. You know that? I really am sick of it. I mean, my Reverso, I think, is better than any Datejust.
But it's not that Rolex now, you've got to admit it, really. Do you know what, Paul? Rolex now, I would say, is not a prestige brand anymore, because every man and his dog has got one. You know, even bloody road sweepers, warehousemen, all wear subs. And do you know what? Now, there's a catalogue in the United Kingdom, which I don't know if you have them in Australia, where you can order like some clothes or whatever and pay £2 a week off the catalogue. You know, it's called Littlewoods, right? They are selling second-hand Rolexes where you can buy a Datejust for £18 a week.
Yes, yes.
So why would you invest that kind of money in a watch?
Look, I do love Rolex. I tell you what I've done, Rudy. Let me tell you this. Me and you have spoken about my collection for a long time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and you know how I feel about your collection. You know that.
I must say, I got to tell you this, Rudy. In all honesty, I really get a lot of enjoyment out of having one brand. That makes sense to you? One brand. So, you know, because my problem is I get a bit caught up on watches. I really love my watches, but I like to have one brand, just one brand that means the world to me. And I got to tell you the truth there, Rudy. You know, one watch is, I think, is I'm just going to bring up a picture here. One watch per brand, I think, has really helped me be a lot more settled as a person. Because I used to want, you want a Rolex Submariner, you want a Rolex, some sort of GMT function, you want this, you want that. Hang on a minute. Why not explore other brands? Now, can you see my collection? This has got everything except the Breguet in it. Can you see it on the screen here?
I can, yeah.
Oh, let's just look at every piece. Reverso. That is better than any Rolex. Agreed?
100%. But what you'll get is
the Moonwatch. The Moonwatch. You know, when this Omega was out there, Rolex was still using Valjoux. That's like an ETA movement in their Daytona.
But did you know that when NASA chose the Moonwatch,
yes, they tested their
tests. Rolex failed the tests.
I mean, the Moonwatch, that is better than the Paul Newman Daytona. Okay. Yeah. The IWC, right? That's really a real. It's got a Guilloche dial. You notice with Rolex, they don't have Guilloche dials or fancy stuff like that. Very rarely do they have fancy dials. They do it as cheaply and nasty as possible.
I know.
I mean, the Explorer 2, I like, but that was, you know, I've got the model which has got the solid end links, right? They used to be like rattlesnakes. They're called rattlesnake versions. And then the Patek walks all over. Can't compete with Patek. As a business, I think you've got to admire Rolex. Rolex, you've got to admire Rolex. But
I get the question, Paul, right? And I don't know if you've had it. People ask me, it's a twofold question, really. They say, which is the best watch in the world? And I say to people, well, if you're talking for marketing, Rolex. If you're talking about quality of movement and finish, Patek Philippe.
Yes, I understand. You're right there. I mean, no,
just to interrupt you, but someone said this to me the other day, and I tried to explain it to him, right? They said perhaps that that Patek Philippe and AP and those, obviously, they're not so successful in their marketing strategy as Rolex, right? And I said, it's not that. I said, it's not that. I said, because AP and Rolex make a limited amount of watches between 35 and 40,000 a year, marketing campaigns are no beneficial to them because they cannot manufacture the watches to keep up with the demand. So, yes. So there's no point them doing that because they're not a milling machine.
No, that's very, very true. It's very, very, very true indeed, Rudy. It's. I got to be honest with you. I'm very, very disappointed with how Rolex has this bullshit limited supply. That is just. I don't know what you think, Rudy. I think that's insulting. I don't know what you think.
My point is this, Paul. Right? How can you say a watch?
Hugely insulting. I think it's very insulting to have watches which supposedly are in short supply. This is an absolute crock of shit.
Well, I can prove that in an instant. I'll give you an example, right? They say that the Daytonas are limited because they cannot manufacture a model. And yet you can buy plenty of precious metal ones in gold and white gold and platinum, but it's the same movement. So they're still making the same movements.
Yeah.
And the same case on the Daytona is the same case on a Yachtmaster. So it's complete BS.
It is bullshit. Rudy, it is a complete Ponzi scheme. And I got to tell you, I love Rolex. Don't get me wrong. I do love Rolex. Like, I think, I got a soft spot, but I got to tell you this. I think there's a lot better than Rolex. I think in the dress watch.
Right, if I was to buy a Rolex Submariner, right? If I was to ever buy one, the only one I would buy would be the non-date two-liner. Because to me, that was the best Rolex that they did.
Yep. I understand.
I think, you see, when Rolex improve a watch or modify a watch, is not necessarily for the best. And the other thing I discovered as well is that when Rolex release a new version, the first run of them are prototypes. And they modify them as they go along, but don't actually tell anyone what the modifications are. Did you know that?
Yes, that's very true. You're right. It's the Rolex Ponzi scheme. You hit it on the head. You hit it on the head. It's all a con. You know this?
It is a con. But the thing is, it's the attitude of when you go in and spend your hard-earned money, they feel like they're doing you a favor by selling you the watch.
Yes.
And then the fact is this, for them to then say, we got to take the stickers off, we've got to keep the papers for a year. That's your papers. It's your stickers. You own the watch. It's your money. Who are they to dictate to you what you should do with your product? You don't get that with any other company.
You don't get that with any other company. They are a bunch of arrogant fuckers.
And they are creating, Paul, the grey market.
Well, let me say this to you. You know what I think the biggest shame of the world is at the moment? Let me tell you this, Rudy. You tell me what you think of this, okay? And it's not just Rolex I'm angry at, but Rolex, all these people, they will not sell parts to independent watchmakers. If you need a part from Rolex, they're very reluctant to supply. They will say, we take care of the servicing. They do not want watchmakers to have any access to parts. Now, it's not just Rolex. Swatch is doing the same thing. It's all a big... Then the Swiss turn around and say, nobody's learning watchmaking. Well, mechanic, and you can only get oil and filters. You can't get any other parts. They're trying to hang on to this.
I can say with authority, AP do supply parts.
Okay, I agree with you, but
well, I'll explain to you why. If you go onto the UK website, right?
Yeah.
One of the biggest second-hand dealers, Watchfinder, are on the AP website as a service centre.
Okay.
So, and they're not part of anything to do with AP, but AP have recognised them as an AP service centre within the United Kingdom. So look, they are a non-AP.
I got to tell you this now. Rolex used to give watchmakers tools to actually open and work on their equipment. Did you know this?
Oh yeah, they asked for them all back. They've
asked for them all back, and they no longer distribute tools to indies. With you, they are real nasty. They got these independents to build the business for them, and now they turn around and say, see you later, we can make more money without you. That's what they do.
Oh,
that is what they do. They are ruthless. For this, they are really ruthless shits. That's what they are. They are very nasty. They are a business. Make no bones about it. They are a commercial organization that needs to make profit.
Of course. Well, actually, Rolex don't need to make profit because they're a foundation. They don't give a rat's.
No, they don't give it.
They haven't got anyone to answer to. That's their strength. They've got no one to answer to.
Well, let's talk about something. I want to talk to you, Rudy. Okay, now look. Not everyone has as much money as yourself, Rudy. You've got a wonderful collection. Not trying to put you down, Rudy, just telling you the truth. You've got an amazing collection. But let's look at some alternatives to Rolex. Instead of getting a Rolex Submariner, what can you recommend for the average person that as good an investment?
Well, on the second-hand market, are you talking? If they bought second-hand?
Yes. Either way, you tell me. What would you recommend?
First of all, a JLC Master compressor for a start.
Yes, that's a great watch. That's a great watch.
It's a fantastic watch. It's got a fantastic movement. You'll never lose money if you buy it second-hand. It will retain its value. The other one is the Blancpain bathyscaphe as well.
Yes. That's an amazing piece of kit. I've really become turned on by that brand. It's an amazing brand. And
I'll tell you something. They are now. If you go onto Chrono 24, Paul, and you look at the Blancpain 50 fathoms range, they're not losing money. They're now stable, and like the one that I've got. You just can't find them second-hand. You just can't find them.
No, you're right.
And so I really believe, you know, that you get a lot more watch for your money. And
okay, say you want a GMT, what would you recommend then? A GMT function watch. What would you recommend?
Well, you can go for a Geo Reverso, JJ Lecoute. That's technically a GMT because it's two faces. Or the other GMT. That I would probably recommend is you can get again JLC do a normal a GMT version of their watch. There's plenty out there, really. But do we really need GMT these days with iPhones and smartphones? You really need it. You know, you can just speak into your phone and say, "What's the time in Japan?" and it tells you, you know, instantly.
Yes.
Do you know, it's a bit of an obsolete function. It's a bit of a gimmick, really. Or, you know, or if I was to get a GMT in a Rolex model, I would probably go for what you went for, which is the Explorer 2, because it's a bang-for-buck watch on the second-hand market with both functions. Because you don't need a rotating bezel for a GMT. You don't need it.
Yes, no, you're right there, Rudy. I got to tell you, Rudy, it's the Rolex. The biggest thing that pisses me off is that Rolex doesn't have, you know, the other thing that annoys me is that, you know, every Rolex retailer I go to looks the same as every other retailer. There is nothing. I've been to Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Bangkok, Vietnam. Dealers. Every store looks the same. There's nothing unique about any dealers. Do you agree with that? What do you think of that comment?
Yeah, it's a bit like artificial intelligence. They're like clones. You know, they've all got their little Rolex pin on their little suit, and they think, you know, they're the bee's knees because they've got a little Rolex pin, you know, on their suit, and they come out with the same spiel as everyone else, you know, and they don't actually know what they're saying. They just know what they've been told, you know. And again, they cannot tell you straight, you know, when there's a list. Oh, we're not taking this. Well, then, if they're not taking lists, then how does anyone ever get one of their?
Tell me this:
watches?
What made you? When did you? How many Rolexes did you have at your peak?
I had 8. I owned 8 Rolexes, Paul. 8. I sold the lot. Sold the lot.
You have any left now?
The only one I've got is Yachtmaster, which I gave to my girlfriend. I don't own any Rolexes. I still buy Rolexes, but I buy them to flip, to make money. You know, I told you I love Rolex because they make me money, because people are so stupid to pay over the odds for it. Do you know, I had a Rolex Sea Dweller, right? And I sold it for $7 grand more than I paid for it. What are you going to do? If people were stupid to pay the odds for a watch, I'll take their money for their stupidity.
Yes, I see what you're saying.
You know, and the thing is this, right? To go back to why Rolex are killing their dealers, is that they say they're doing this to control the grey market and in the UK, but do you know what? 95% of the Rolex watches in the UK that are from the grey market come from countries like Italy and Portugal and Spain, where they're almost financially bankrupt, right? So what they're doing is to keep the dealership with Rolex, is they're saying to grey dealers in the UK, right, you've got to buy these less desirable models, and we're chucking a few sports models to go with it if you buy these other ones. And that's what they're doing. And they're shipping them out.
Yes, you're right. You're right. It's a complete... People want Rolex, but, you know, that people... The thing is, too, is that so many people these days have a number of Rolexes. It used to be that people would have one watch. What do you think's happened there? Why has that happened? We're richer than before?
No, it just means that I think it's that the old zero interest free credit is more available. I think more than the reason.
Yes. So you got no desire to buy any Rolexes?
I buy them, but I buy them to flip to buy what I really want. And you know, the funny thing is this, right? You get certain people I know in the watch industry that sell on the second-hand market Rolexes, and even I know ones where they've got 50,000 Rolexes in their catalog to sell second-hand and so on, right? Yeah. But none of them wear a Rolex. None of them wear one themselves.
Wow, there you go, Rudy.
They buy they say we buy Rolexes to sell, we don't buy Rolexes to wear.
Very interesting. You worked in the music industry. There was a lot of Rolex wearers there.
Look, actually, not the ones I actually worked with never wore Rolexes. None of them. You know, I mean, to be honest, certain guys that I work with in the music industry, they wear a Seiko 5 because watches didn't do it for them. I mean, like the Bee Gees.
Yeah,
they were all big Cartier fans.
Oh, I see.
And every time we did a tour, the tour promoter also would give them a Cartier watch, and it would say the name of the tour engraved on the back of the watch.
Yes.
And then you get the other people like Eric Clapton, that's a Patek fan. He wears Patek.
Yes, yes. Charlie Sheen.
Yeah, he wears Patek as well.
But that
and so does Brad Pitt. He's a Patek fan, and so is Ed Sheeran is a big Patek fan.
Yes, yes, yes. So, getting sick of Rolex. When was this?
When I discovered that they really didn't give a rat crap about their customers. Because if they don't give a rat crap about their customers, then when I've got a problem, and then if I've got a problem with a dealer over a watch, it could be a service, it could be anything, they're not going to care. Whereas a company like Patek Philippe or JLC or Blancpain or AP, they take it personally because they see that their customer base is important to them. And their brand. But Rolex have got to the stage where there's such a churning, burning machine. You're just a small speck in the environment.
A lot of people aren't going to like what you've said about Rolex. We're going to get a lot of flack about this. You know this, don't you?
Yeah, well, the fact is this, I'm going by my experience, and you can't shoot me down from my experience.
Yes, I understand. It's very interesting to hear your comments there. I must say, I'm very interested to hear on Rolex, because I got sick of Rolex a long time ago, because, you know, fantastic. Once you've had a few, you think, oh, okay, yes. It's amazing what the brand can do, but the brand can do no wrong. Like, it seems to retain its value like no other brand. I mean, you must agree with that. It is amazing.
But the thing is, I said, I don't hate Rolex as a brand. I hate them as an organization. There's a difference.
Yes.
And the problem is like another example would be the Rolex Deep Sea Cameron is way more expensive than a Submariner, but it's the same movement.
Yes.
So you're paying all that extra thousands of pounds for a different case.
Yes.
But the movement is the same. It's all a con. The whole thing, Paul, is a con, and it's what I call propaganda, where people a mind control, where they've actually sold it so much that people have been brainwashed by their marketing. It's like they cannot think above Rolex, you know. And not all people, certain people, and that's why they've got to have the Rolex Submariner. They've got to have the GMT. They've got to have the Pepsi. They've got, but it's the same watch.
It is. It is the same watch.
Now, if I was to have one Rolex watch, it would be something like the Explorer or the GMT, because it's the most useful. It's got the water resistance.
You know what I like about the Explorer 2 so much?
What?
It looks least like a Rolex.
I would agree with that, and also
it doesn't get recognized. It doesn't get recognized as it's an aficionado's watch.
I would agree with that, and I'd also say that I actually prefer, myself personally, the model that you have to the new one. I prefer the size and I prefer the style of myself. Now, the other thing is this, Paul. I don't know if you agree with me or not, and you can put me right on this because I'm always happy to take criticism.
Sure.
But I believe that generally the people that buy Rolex like to shoot the cuff because they know people recognize the brand, and it's like they feel that they've made it by owning a Rolex. It's like they've arrived. But when someone buys a watch like a JLC or a Patek or an AP or even a Blancpain or even a Breguet, those people got nothing to prove because no one knows or gives a rat's ass what that watch is.
Yes, yes. Clive tells an amazing story. He was talking to some attorneys at work, and they saw his Reverso, and they had no idea. They assumed it was so much more expensive than their Rolex.
And do you know the funny thing about that story was, and I spoke to Clyde about that, is that a few weeks ago when I said about not being with the sheep and having something more exclusive, that moment is when the penny dropped for him, and it clicked to him.
Yeah,
you know, it clicked. He got it. He got it at that moment in time. You know, at that point. And I think his way of thinking has changed now towards Rolex, and he can see by owning a brand like a JLC, you know, you've got something which is more personal than a Rolex. Does that make sense or not?
You're right.
You know that. I mean, the thing is, this another thing is, right, what people don't get, because I've had this before where people say, oh, I buy a Rolex because it impresses the ladies and this kind of thing. And I explain to them, women don't give a rat's about a Rolex watch. They give a rat's about credit cards. They give a rat's about credit
and what you can do for them, and what you can do for them.
And the only credit cards they're interested in are the ones that you spend on them.
That's right.
They don't care that you've got a Rolex. It's not their watch. What good is it to them that you've got a Rolex? They want your money, not your watch.
That's right. That's exactly. You hit it on the head.
You know, Rolex is nothing. All the Rolex tells them is they may be in for a little bit of coin from you. But unfortunately, the majority of the times, certain people that have Rolexes don't have a pot to pee in, because they've spent all their money on that one watch, and that's it. They've arrived to them. You know, it doesn't mean anything. You know, it doesn't mean anything. Watches do. You see, I don't buy a watch for a status symbol. I buy a watch because I like it. I've got real shitters. I've got a Seiko 5. I've got Citizen watches. It makes no difference to me. I buy watches because I like it, and I don't care what other people think. And you're the same. I don't want to be part of a club that everyone else is a part of. As Groucho Marx said, Paul, I won't join a club that will have me as a member. You know, I won't do it. I want to be my own person, like you do. I mean, every watch you've got in your collection, which you can see, right? You did not buy any one of those watches based on what someone else has got or what they've recommended to you. You've bought every one of those watches with your own choice of yourself.
Very true, Rudy.
It's true. You know, people are going to shoot me down in this video and hate me for this video. But at the end of the day, you know, sometimes, you know, sometimes you can hate what I'm saying, but it's true. You know, you may be offended by what I say, but it doesn't mean it's not true.
That's correct. Hey, just very quickly there. We've just had a $22 donation from Stephen. Thank you so much there. I really do appreciate that. He's just finished the ArchieLuxury movie. I actually have sent some advanced screenings to a few people. Rudy, I've got you on the show here. I'm going to officially release it to the public now. ArchieLuxury, the movie.
I enjoyed it. I watched it and I enjoyed it.
About to release it now. I'm going to make it public now. This is a 2-hour blockbuster. 2 hours.
I've seen it. I watched it.
No worries. It's all happening. It's all happening. So, yeah, that's.
I think they'd be in for a few nice surprises in that film.
Yes, yes. No worries at all. There. It's now live. That movie is now happening, baby. It's now happening. So
now I was going to say to you, Paul, right? You know your entire collection you've got 5 watches now.
Six.
Yeah, sorry, 6. So if I was to say to you, I'm going to take your watches away, but you can keep one. Which one would it be?
Look, I would honestly say to you, I would be, as a one-watch person, if I had to sell them because of financial things, the Patek would go because there's so much money there. The watches I'm really attached to, if I had to be a one-watch person, would either be the IWC or the Reverso.
But if I was to take them away and say, look, you're only having one, that's it.
I'd probably keep the Reverso.
And if I was in your position, I would do the same.
It's such a great piece. That is a great piece. The Reverso is such a cool piece.
And it's so versatile because
it is.
You could, and what some people don't realize is actually not a dress watch; it's a sports watch.
Exactly right. It was the original sports watch. Yes, that's exactly it.
You know, so you can wear it in it. That's the one watch you could take away with you because you could go on a business trip. Yeah, so you could wear it casual on the plane, and then you could have an evening dinner function or a meeting in a suit, and it would still look in place.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly
it. And that would probably be the same for me if I had to keep one watch. It would probably be my Reverso also.
Is that right? That's the one that you love the most.
Yeah, because I think it's the most practical out of all the watches. Really, it's the most practical watch out of all the watches. In honesty, because it ticks every box of every kind of situation you want, and also the fact that particular watch will never date.
Hey, just cover me for 1 minute, Rudy. Just cover me for 1 minute.
Right, okay. No problem. It's a shame I can't see the comments, Rudy, because I'd answer the comments. Let me see if I can see the comments. See if people will... Well, hang on a sec. If anyone will answer me, want me to answer any questions, I don't know. Comments. I don't hate Rolex, Bishop. I said I hate the company of the way they treat their people. I don't hate Rolex at all. I think the watches are good watches, but they're just not personally for me, and I just don't want to be part of a company that don't care about their customers.
Sorry about that, Rudy.
That's all right. I'm just answering some questions. I'm seeing the comments now.
Go ahead. Please, you proceed.
Well, they can ask, the thing is, Paul, they can ask me any questions. I don't mind if they give you $2 for the question.
No worries. Sounds great.
If they pay you $2, I'll answer any question they fire at me.
Yes.
No worries, you know. And the thing is this, going back to your watches, Paul, right? The thing about your Reverso is...
Oh, I love that Reverso. And you know, the funny thing is, when I bought it, I was deciding whether I go for a bluesy sub or the Reverso, and I think there was no contest. The Reverso was class above the sub.
But do you know the other thing that people might not realize is the difference between those brands like JLC and Patek and AP and Blancpain is that watch could be 60 years old and you can send it for a service and they still provide the parts for that watch.
Yes, very true.
Whereas Rolex vintage models, oh, we cannot do that anymore. We don't make the dials anymore. We don't make the parts anymore. They just give up on the watch.
Well, Rolex, with vintage models, they have butchered watches. I know people who've sent dials in. They should say, hey, leave it. It's patina. Just don't touch it. They've exchanged it. And
it gets beyond that now. Do you not know? The thing is this, I can't speak for the rest of the world with Rolex, but I know in the UK, if they will replace the dial and they won't give you your old dial back.
Oh, that's the same everywhere in the world. They are just nasty.
But it's your dial. This is what I don't get. It's your dial.
They are. You try arguing with them. You can't argue. You know, they're very, very mean.
I've heard stories, and I don't know whether it's true, of people that have sent in a really expensive vintage watch, and it's lost value overnight because they've replaced the dial.
Yes, and they don't warn you about this. Hey, don't do that. No, I know many people who've done that. Yes, I know exactly. And you know what? I'll tell you a crooked story. Do you want to hear a crooked Rolex story?
Yeah, definitely.
I know a guy who sold a watch at Philips, and it had a very rare enamel dial, a pink enamel day-date, okay?
Yeah.
Sold to a Middle Eastern person. Anyhow, this Middle Eastern person gave it to his wife. His wife took it to Rolex and said, can you service this? Excuse me, madam, the dial's not original. It'll be $1,200 for a new dial, a champagne dial. Now, that watch had sold for basically a $20,000 premium because of the dial. He went back to the auction house and said, this dial's not real. And after what happened then, the person who sold it, they went back to Rolex Switzerland and said, what the hell are you doing saying this? And Rolex Switzerland confirmed it was real. Service centers have a habit of taking the valuable parts, okay? Parts go out the back door. It's a very grubby, nasty world. They know what parts are extremely valuable.
And also, I reckon that certain dials and stuff that they replace, they keep in their archives of their museum and so on. I mean, it's like the recent... well,
I would say I think it's the manager keeps it, the store manager. That's how he gets his kickbacks and that. That's what I think. It's very, very savage. They are very, very nasty at times to deal with. And
well, it's like someone said the other day about the Paul Newman Daytona that went for 17.5 million. They said you would buy that. Rolex bought that watch.
yes,
Rolex bought the watch for that. They bought that watch themselves, so no one else would have that watch, and it would never be sold again. That's the power that they've got.
I believe that. I believe that.
If that watch was 20 million, Rolex still would have paid it because they're a charity. They've got the money for it.
That's right. It's a tax deduction for them.
Exactly. It's part of their museum, you know, of what they do, you know. And this is why I think that people shouldn't take personally the comments I say about Rolex. Personally to them because they own a Rolex. If they've got that Rolex and they enjoy it, who am I to complain about that? All I'm explaining, and like the same with you, Paul, is from our experiences, you know, and experience is king.
Yes.
It's not hearsay. It's your own personal experience.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, you know, some people will say that I hate Rolex, and I'll reiterate it again. I don't hate Rolex as a watch. They're just not for me. They're just not what I want from a watch. If you're spending, say for instance, 100,000 Australian dollars on a car, right? You're not going to spend it on a Ford, are you?
No, that's right.
You want something a bit more special for your money. Even something like a second-hand Aston Martin or a second-hand Maserati.
Yes. Right.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. When you get to a certain level of money, you got to look at other options for your money, because you know yourself, if you buy a £29,000 GMT or a £35,000 day date, £40,000 day date watch from Rolex, it's not like the steel models. Those models are going to tank in money because the precious metal watches lose a lot of money the moment they go out the door. You know that yourself. So if you're spending that kind of coin, there's a whole better world out there of other brands.
That's it.
In my opinion. You know, but it's preferential taste again. You know, it's like the other watches I don't get is I don't get Richard Mille watches. I don't get it. I think they look like a car crash on a wrist. I don't get it. I just don't get it. I like FP Journe, fantastic watches. You know, again, a great brand. I like Vacheron Constantin. They're another great brand. You know, but I just don't get the likes of Richard Mille or Frank Muller. I don't get those watches. I just don't get them. You know, it's like Art Deco on the wrist.
Rudy, we better wrap this up. Thank you so much.
Definitely.
And you've helped launch the movie. The movie's been launched. That's available, guys. That's ArchieLuxury, the movie.
You know what you ought to do, Paul? You ought to start burning some DVDs of it and charging people $10 and they can have a DVD version signed.
Yes, that could be a way to go, Rudy. Thank you so much for watching, guys. And yeah, I'm just going to end the broadcast now. Great, Rudy, that's